Okay, so I came across this interesting video from Wired. It's about this 40-year long Dungeons and Dragons game, which I was extremely intrigued by. Like, as soon as I read this, I was like, what? How is that even possible? How could an individual keep a single campaign running for that long? Like, I've done D&D before, only with like one specific friend group, but I've done like a couple of different campaigns or whatever. But this specific one is like I was kind of I was blown away just by the title of this. So I wanted to watch this and just get an idea of what and how this is even possible. So let's see what this is.
Remember that game of D&D you started when you were 11? What if it never stopped?
My name is Robert Wardoff. I'm a history professor at the University of Western Ontario. I am a dungeon master for a campaign that has been going on for 40 years.
What began in
40 years. 40 years. I can't even fathom that. Like I've done a campaign for like a couple of weeks. Shout out to Nabil for being the best DM.
secret with a few friends has turned into a game that takes up much of Robert's life and most of his house. Robert has around 30,000 hand-painted figurines, countless custom-made pieces of terrain, and dozens of devoted players taking part in his campaign.
If you're going to keep a game going for 40 years, it's going to have to be a good game. If you're going to have people who are going to want to play, that are going to want to fly in, you're going to have to offer a product that is going to be better than all the other alternatives that are out there.
Wait, people are flying in. And he said product, so that means he is selling this. Okay, I'm really intrigued.
Say with confidence that this is the best Dungeons and Dragons game in the world.
Okay.
So if I'm playing for 10 hours a week at 52 weeks in a year, that means I'm doing that times 40. That would be 20,800 hours.
How many minutes is that?
So if I figured
that... I like how you just casually like minutes.
That out in minutes, that would end up being 1.24 million minutes, I think.
As you crest the ridge, there seems to be
quite
a commotion. You estimate it could be as many as 24 or so goblins. You surprise them as much as they have surprised you. I need a surprise roll.
That's really just the start. Almost every major decision in Robert's life.
So I'm noticing that, just the tech that he's got surrounded there. So like, obviously he's got terrain, he's got miniatures, but he's also got, a couple, I saw like a tablet on the wall, a TV in the background. What else has he got going on there? So yeah, there's like a tablet on the wall. I wonder what else he may have that's not being shown that we can't like tell, that it's happening. Like maybe, like my thoughts are like maybe he has some kind of, definitely some sound or something coming from somewhere at different points. But what about like, I don't know, special effects like smoke or something? I don't know.
Or so goblins. You surprise them as much as they have surprised you. I need a surprise roll.
Okay, so the TV, there were people playing remotely essentially. So, yeah, I wonder if there is sound.
That's really just the start. Almost every major decision in Robert's life is designed to keep the game going.
When I was buying a house, the most important part for me was getting a gaming space that I could use.
Yeah, same. Like if I'm getting a house, I definitely need to have a space specifically dedicated for gaming. Like that's a guarantee. Even if I don't constantly have people over every single weekend, I would probably try to make a point to have people over as much as possible. If I had a gaming setup, I'd probably put something on like meetup.com or something, like to make sure that I'm utilizing that to the best of my ability.
My entire basement is my gaming area.
If he doesn't slow down, he's going to need a bigger house.
Nice Jaws reference there.
I have a lot of figs. I've got orcs, I've got elves, I've got dwarves, I've got all the basic things that you'd expect, but I also have very distinct and unique figs. I have vampires, I have
Figs.
undead, I have zombies.
We don't call
I have
them figures, we call
werewolves,
them figs.
beholders, Tiamat, the mother of all dragons, all the big demonic lords from the Demogorgon,
Very impressive.
but also heroes. So all the great kings and queens of countries, the high-level wizards, all of these things. My goal is to have everything.
But what's the point of having so many figurines if you don't have any amazing terrain to place them on? Robert has no shortage in that department either.
I need to be able to adapt to wherever the party's going to go. That means that I need to have my green terrains. I need to have mountain terrain. I need to have all of my winter terrain, my arid desert terrains, my water terrains. If they're going to go into a town, now I need a town. Okay, are they in a Roman town? Are they in an Anglo-Saxon town? Are they in an African town? Is it high medieval? Is it low medieval? So now I'm trying to be able to put out a village or a town for every one of these historical settings.
Okay, just in that within itself, I can see the value in just wanting to, just if it's a, even if it's just a regular D&D game, right? Like if it's just completely benign and standard, just the fact that there are textures and figurines for or figs for every single scenario that you could possibly be in, like that is definitely unique. I don't know of anyone that does have that, because these things are insanely expensive. It's not even like, there's no way I would ever even attempt to try to get into that, because it's like one of those things is like once you start, it's kind of hard to stop. And if you do stop, it's like you just kind of like wasted your money. So it's he went all in, and I applaud him for that for sure.
I can't put figurines on the table unless they are painted up to a certain level.
Okay.
That means that someone's got to do a heck of a lot of painting. And so that ends up being me. If you found me on an average day working on the game, you'd probably see me in my painting room, and I'm going to be spending 2, 3, 4 hours painting figs.
And do people take their figs home?
No,
you're not
Nobody is
taking-
allowed to take their figurines home.
You're not taking
Nobody is
these
actually
figs home.
allowed to touch the figs on the table. So that's also something that would be different. A person who played Dungeons and Dragons would probably come to my table and they would immediately reach over to grab their fig. I'm probably going to growl at them and tell them don't touch the figs because I have to move everything. I'm sure my critics would.
Don't touch my figs. Yo, I seen you reach for my fig. Touch it. I dare you.
Would say that there's a god complex going on. How about that? This here is the figurine of the demon lord Orcus. It's well known to Dungeons and Dragons, and in my campaign 100 years ago, which would be in actual time something like maybe 1989, the group banished this demon. So they thought that's fine. Only recently, last year actually, the demon's back. They don't know where he is. They're desperately trying to.
Okay, so when the last of the demons had emerged through the gate from the abyss and wandered from the cavern and onto Shamar, the party awaited for the emergence of Orcus, but he never came. The party was deceived. He has arrived through a different gate. I really love those blood effects. Really cool. Nice. Where are the dead minis from? Okay, so it seems like he's keeping the campaign somewhat going on Instagram. In some way, or at least garnering attention for it somehow, or just updating people. Like people are able to follow the campaign itself, which is cool. I imagine I would want to do the same if I had a single campaign going for 40 years. I wonder if, because they didn't actually say that though. It's implied here. They didn't actually say that it's a single campaign, but it's implied.
Find him, and he's definitely up to no good.
While fantasy role-playing and nerd culture are often celebrated today, Robert's campaign started during a time when people felt like they needed to play in secret.
Yeah, they said it's a
In
campaign.
the 80s and 90s, it was certainly more difficult to try to talk about or explain the game to people. I grew up in a very small town, and it was quite a conservative town. And so the
completely
town
fair.
inevitably found out that we were playing, and they didn't know what the heck we were doing.
Yeah, a lot of people thought that it was some demon worshipping type stuff. D&D, uh, everything that Wizards of the Coast does, Magic the Gathering or whatnot. People just immediately were afraid or worried that this was some cult type stuff happening in the basement, and they were worried for their children. Put them in church. Let's exorcise these demons from our children.
And Dungeons and Dragons had very bad press at the time.
Nerddom.
Tonight
Let's
we begin
exercise
with a
nerddom.
story about make-believe adventure and real-life violence. What some critics fear is a connection between the two in a game called Dungeons and Dragons.
A movie came out
Of
while
course.
we were playing called Mazes and Monsters. And it's a story of how they play this game and then they try to act it out in real life, and basically bad things certainly happen.
Okay, so at least there's some sort of precedence for why people would fear this sort of thing. And that makes sense because, like, you could argue, you could say, oh, why? It still doesn't make sense that, a movie comes out and then people are worried. But, like, that's how any sort of folklore or fiction has worked in the past, right? Like, I mean, look at all types of scary movies these days. Slashers. Well, those aren't even like a these days kind of movie, but like within the past 10, 20 years, slashers, ghost movies, like possession stuff, all that type of stuff. Like, it makes people afraid that that sort of thing is real. So you can't really blame them for that.
You tell me of the giant dragon. On my travels here, I heard.
What's now called the Satanic Panic was going on at the time. Why does my son want to play this game all the time? Why is he obsessed about it? What are you doing to him? Are you a cult leader? I got called a cult leader, a communist, like all these crazy labels. When I watched Stranger Things, it obviously hit home for me.
What is it?
What if it's the Demogorgon? Oh Jesus, we're so screwed if it's the Demogorgon.
It's not the Demogorgon.
The whole concept matched exactly what we were doing in the early 1980s.
Over the following decades, Robert went on to build a campaign of unrivaled complexity.
Okay, unravel complexity. Let me take another look at what's going on here. All right, so at least it looks like there's windows and stuff. I imagine he said it was his basement though, so this doesn't look like a basement. Or maybe it is, because that doesn't necessarily. Well, no, those look like windows. Oh, it could still be a basement and have windows, right? I'm sure there are a lot of. Yeah, I think I went over to my manager's house and he had a basement that had like these large windows because it was like he lived on like a hill. So yeah, he must live on a pretty big house, in a pretty big house, pretty big piece of land, I imagine, or decent sized. But yeah, because like all those like nerds in one place, in my experience, it tends to get pretty stuffy in there. So definitely necessary. But yeah, that. So he's got maps on the wall. Refreshments on the back table. Yep, that's fair. Don't touch my figs.
Rivaled complexity.
One of the things that makes my game unique is the story and the depth of the campaign. My world is an alternative fantasy version of historical Earth with then other historical aspects added to it. So if somebody comes in and they want to go to Athens, I can now bring in that history, philosophy, religion into the game. I'm able to create when I need to create, come up with totally new races, totally new nations, totally new cultures, totally new mythologies, but also to use what the world already has.
A typical dungeon master curates the quest for a handful of players over the course of a few months. Robert, meanwhile, is tracking the adventures of more than 50 players, with story arcs that often span decades.
Since the beginning, there's probably been about 500 characters that have been made and played within the game. When a new player comes in, I'm inviting them to play a game that they're going to be welcome to keep playing until I die. So you could start a character, 9 generations later, that family could take over let's say the Roman Empire. On one level, you're playing that individual character. On a macro level, you're also controlling the Roman Empire. So there are numerous story arcs that are going on. Many of those last for generations. There's love stories, romances, there's quests, there's vengeance. All these things are happening. So even though there is this large campaign quest, this large ultimate goal, you've got literally thousands of subplots and sub-campaigns going on.
Okay, so that makes sense. Now I understand. So that's how you keep a single campaign going for 40 years, is because there's constantly, it's not the same players every single time, obviously, right? Because no one cares about that as much as this individual does. Not like taking a shot at him or whatever, but like obviously that can't be, that it can't be anything otherwise. He has to be the one that cares the most about it. So there's constantly new players coming in and out, but he's keeping track of everything that happened for those individual players that are even no longer playing, and using the things that those players, or the type of interactions that they created, that those players' characters did within the campaign, kind of ripple out, I suppose, into the entire world itself. And in case that single player comes back from, say, like 15 years ago, he'll be able to say, like, well, it's been 15 years since your character did this or whatever. He's been stagnant. These types of things happen as a result of what that character did. So yeah, that makes sense. It's complex. You have to definitely be passionate about this to maintain that sort of thing. But I imagine, so he did say product though. Like, I wonder if every single person is paying, and what that model looks like, because that'd be really intriguing to know.
From the beginning, Robert quickly learned which rules could be bent and which rules could be broken.
When we started playing, there was probably a short period of time when I played according to the actual rules, but after that I had to fill in holes, and so I developed my own rule system, and I've never really gone back. So I have what gamers would call a homebrew rule system. And actually, that's how the game was intended. When the game first came out, one of the lines in the Dungeon Master Guide told you that these are a set of rules, but to apply these loosely. And within my game and my world, there are all kinds of different aspects that you wouldn't see in an ordinary Dungeons & Dragons rule system. My rules are fast, they're quick flowing, people don't have to stop and check things, and that speed of gameplay is something that I find so different in my game from ordinary Dungeons & Dragons.
Okay. So that's another unique identifier there that he just mentioned, is that he has a homebrew and it's much quicker. And I would argue that is definitely a hindrance in playing D&D, is because, constantly having to look at your sheet and determine, like, okay, I have this and that. At least, like, I thought it was just for me being a new player. I thought that was just a thing that I'd have to get used to. But if that is a common, I guess, complaint about the game, I can see why this particular campaign might be interesting for even seasoned individuals. So that makes a lot
Robert
of
strives
sense.
to keep the stakes as high as possible for his players, especially when it comes to life and death consequences for their characters.
I want death to mean something. I don't want this to be like a video game that you simply hit the reset button and here it's going to start a new character. So when your character dies, if you don't have any other characters, then you're
out of the game.
Over.
Yeah. See, that's another thing that I dislike about D&D. Like, I get it that the DM's job is to make sure that the players are having fun, and typically if your character dies, it's not that fun. So you have to, I saw on a Twitter post at one point that in order to be a good DM, you have to, like, allow your players to win, but you have to make them think that it was of their own doing somehow, which is really challenging to do. But I see where he's going with this, is because, like, yeah, like, death should mean something. It shouldn't be just us playing make believe. Like, that's not fun. It needs to be, and there needs to be some cost. There's some stake, some risk actually associated with it. Like, I mean, it's a game, sure, but yeah, like, I don't want to just have my hand held throughout the entire time. So yeah, very interesting.
Or bad things happen. I have seen grown men weep at the table, and that's something I have seen.
Go.
And so when characters Guys, if you don't have any other characters, then you're out of the game. The game's over for you. And so when characters die or bad things happen, I have seen grown men weep at the table. And that's something also, people who don't play are a bit disturbed if they hear that somebody who's been playing a character for a long time weeps at the table. But I'm trying to create emotion. I'm trying to create excitement. People are scared. And knowing that if you die...
I love how he's saying weeps. This man, a grown man, weeps.
You could be out of the game, or that character that you put so much time in is now dead. Obviously, people's heart rates are up. There's emotion going on. So I can't be shocked and surprised when that character dies that there's a show of emotion. I have one daughter, and ever since she was a baby, she's been around this. I think maybe when she was 6 or 7 was the first time when she asked whether she could play. So she created a character as a fairy, and she still plays now. She's 20 years old. I mean, obviously, there's other stuff going on in her life, but she's been playing all the way through. The interesting thing happens when she starts dating, and then her boyfriend wants to play. And of course, I have to tell her straight off the go, now, this relationship may not last forever, but the game's gonna last forever. So get ready, because I'm anticipating a situation when you break up with him, I can't break up with him. So once I allow somebody to come into the game, I'm never ever gonna stop them from playing the game. So sure enough, that situation happened. So it can be a little bit awkward at times. But it means a lot to be able to have my daughter play the game and to have her interested in the game. And she obviously knows what the game means to me, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is, right?
I think there's an assumption that at some point we're all going to grow up and we're going to stop playing games. And so people will say, how does your game end? How's it going to end? And it's like, well, my answer is always, how does the world end? How is your world going to end? Well, it's probably going to end when I die. Well, for you it is, right? And so the answer is largely the same. It's much like life. More than anything else, the game represents friendship. And I find that friendship is based on planks. You need something to hold it together. So we may have gone to high school together, but as we go through our lives, unless we have a plank, we're not going to get together. We're not going to fly to see each other. So as long as I can keep doing it, hopefully for all of my life, I won't lose my friends. My basement's my sanctuary. It's a place that I can come and I can almost, as soon as I walk down here, I am in a different world. And it opens up all the doors of creativity. I don't ever intend on stopping playing, on stopping painting, on stopping building, and on stopping bringing my friends together to play the game. I don't ever intend on quitting.
Okay. So he said it's his friends playing the game. So, yeah, I'm not sure what exactly... Yeah, I feel like I have to find this guy, and I'd love to talk to him about it because this is incredible. This is the game. Follow the game here. The game D&D. All right, so Gary Kahn, he has his own convention. Or at least he did. Yeah, I'm really curious if he's charging people for this because, like, I've been curious about people professionally playing D&D outside of content creators like Critical Role. I wonder if people are actually, like, if this is like a legitimate business model, and if so, if there is a business model behind something like this, and if so, what is it? Because I've mentioned before that the end goal with some of my particular endeavors is to have some sort of interactive game that people can come to and play that lasts in perpetuity, like a D&D campaign, but more mainstream, less nerdy. So I'm really curious about the viability of something like that. Okay, I began asking each player to contribute $60 a year to the game. Why am I paying money for your game? Okay. Raising funds for the collection remains an awkward and difficult issue. Okay. So people were paying for it because they thought it was good. $60 a year. That's really just like him to just maintain. That's like a donation basically. For like that amount of 20,000 miniatures. There's no way that covers that. So this is legitimately his hobby for sure. It is not his business. Because like he even implied that it's like he doesn't ask that anymore. I mean, I could read this whole thing. I'm not going to do it now, but I will. So this is very interesting. I'd love to be able to talk to this guy. He's got a Q&A here. Just do a quick little search. Nothing cost. Pay. Oh. Setting. Yeah, it's really intriguing. Wow. So yeah, the longest D&D campaign is probably in or at least it should be in the Guinness Book of World Records, right? I mean, assuming they care about this sort of thing. But yeah, incredibly interesting. Don't touch this guy's figs. Make sure you follow him at the game the underscore game D&D. Check this out. Kudos to you, sir. I'd love to have a conversation with you about this. Yeah, but regardless, you gotta appreciate when someone is doing something that they love for that long, continuously. And he said he's gonna do it until he dies. It's just something that he enjoys doing, and I commend him for that. Yeah, like and subscribe, and let me know what you think about that concept of having a D&D campaign or any sort of interactive game last that long. And have you ever done something like this? Like, is this something that you're currently involved in? Let me know how that works. And do you know of anyone that is charging for this sort of thing? Like anyone that's paying for it or even donating for it? Let me know what you think. I mean, Critical Role, they make a lot of money. People are probably just dishing out money just to enjoy the content, and maybe there is some interactivity from their end. Maybe they allow some of their viewers to be able to make decisions or have inputs that impact the actual game. But yeah, thanks for watching.